They were elected.
Okay, we're
And
live?
they had a meeting with both of them to talk
So
about being the
we're
chair.
on, I think.
Right?
I didn't speak to them about being the chair.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
No.
That's not what I was
So
told.
I'll just
I don't know who
accept a
told you
small
that. I
stipend.
told you. Okay.
Be concerned.
Okay, all right, so let's have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, there's no one here for public comment, so we'll go right into the superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you. Well, we have two of our principals here today. Both are doing an amazing job this year, let me say. Both in new roles and have new teams. And very, very proud of the work they're doing in their buildings. And we have our improvement plans, and this was a consideration by the committee to allow us to, as we were, when we were establishing new teams, you were gracious in allowing us to let the principals work with their new councils to make sure they had a say and a role in the plan, and then to be able to present that to you in the fall. So this is a result of your patience, and we wanted to thank you for that. And we have two presentations, one from our new middle school principal and one from our new high school principal. And up first is Brian Scott from Cohasset High School. So Brian, have a seat here. Or you can do it from there, actually, if you'd like.
Can everybody see it?
I know. We're out of the camera. I hope we've done our best with the camera.
So I appreciate the extension. It gave me a chance to digest everything over the summer, work with the school council and coming up with stuff that I thought was aligned with the district strategic plan. Once we get that kind of settled, and also with some of the expectations from Jesse. So we have 7 goals, 2 of which could really be combined, all of which I think are in alignment with the district plan. The first is developing a communication strategy for students, for parents, for faculty, really making sure that we are transparent, that we're communicating what's going on in the building, that we're identifying our philosophy and kind of working towards a collective vision of who we are. I want to expand learning opportunities, independent learning opportunities for students, whether it is in project-based learning or extending our community outward to organizations like CSCR or Holly Hill or the town in some kind of real-world projects that give kids some hands-on experiences. I want to articulate and publish some data and develop data teams so that our decisions are driven by clear, actual information that's consistent and year over year that we can start to look at trends. We want to do some work around in-class assessments. That'll probably be deferred until after the data teams are established because there's a certain order and timeline. It's school dependent, district dependent, and we need to kind of work together to figure out what that is. We're working with Elisa and some other organizations to really appreciate the diversity that's within the building. I think we started that last year. We've made some decent strides this year. We're working with the kids. We have a couple of things coming up that will address some of the cultural differences, whether it is racial or economic or political or whatever it is, to make sure that everyone feels included, that they feel like they have a voice, that they feel like they're seen, and fit into the environment that we have. And then we have 2 on safety, which have been a little bit more pressing at the start of the year to make sure people are aware of what we're doing, are comfortable with what we're doing, and are comfortable sending their children to school, which I think is the most important thing. So those are our goals.
Anyone have questions? Jen?
Craig, do you want to go, or
Go
I
ahead.
have a couple
Jump
of
right in.
comments and a
Jump
couple
in.
of questions.
Sure.
First of all, thank you for putting this together. I'm sure you've had a lot on your plate being new this year, and I always appreciate in a school improvement plan when there are very specific objectives, and I really like. There are a few that I kind of put stars by that I liked. The reviewing of the independent study is just, I just think that can be such an important part of a student's education, and it particularly meets the needs of a student who may be the kind of student that thinks outside of the box, but yet like having some sort of definite parameters, I think just automatically bolsters that idea. So I'm just kind of curious, is 35 hours of work about what students do per course?
Exactly.
Okay, and
Right.
that's how you got that number?
So the difference between like an independent study and like a teaching assistant, right? So you might have a teaching assistant in a science department that would help set up labs, would help organize materials. It's just tasks. An independent study is a project. And so what I found over the course of the last 8 years is we have some really awesome projects that are either never brought to completion or never advertised. So, you know, we had a couple of kids who built a rocket ship. And literally, like, there was rocket fuel spilled in the upstairs cafeteria that we needed to clean up because they were about to launch them. We had to call the Federal Aviation Committee to clear some airspace. It never got off the ground. But they got it really far. I didn't approve it. I'm not responsible for the safety of it. But it was really great, and it never, I don't know that ever got put out there. We had a kid who built a drone. We've had kids who've done really cool lobster viability studies. We had a bunch of kids just now who presented to NOAA on watershed data that they've been collecting over 4 years through CSCR, have used a little bit of time in school, and have come up with some conclusions that kind of trace back sewerage leakage into the water supply by tracing, I forget what it's called, optical something, which is basically like laundry detergent, right?
Yeah.
But it's real stuff, and they were able to tie that with the removal of the dam in Situate, tie it with some other stuff that's been part of the economic policy talks. It linked to the shellfish erosion, like the strength of the shell, which had some implications for the scallop industry. So it's real world stuff that I don't know that we've ever done a really great job of publicizing, and yet it's been going on for a long time. So part of what I want to do is continue to expand those opportunities because they're real, they're free. People are willing to do them. So for some of them, it can extend all year. It can be a real difference maker in colleges. It's stuff that kids don't have to explain why they're doing it. They know why they're doing it. They want to do it. You show up at CSCR on a Thursday morning at 7:30, and there's 15, 20 kids there doing drifter research, on eelgrass that I still don't understand why it matters, but it does, right? To somebody.
Right.
And I think we need to do a better job of promoting that and getting it out there. So that's kind of the goal behind that.
So I put some stars by that. I also think just for the safety for your goal 6, again, there's just really specific things of what you're going to do, with the signage and of the chemical closet. I just think those kinds of things are just great. You just, you put them on a list and they get done, which is awesome. With the data that you mentioned, I'm assuming this is coordinating with the data person that you brought in, or?
Well, yeah, I mean.
Or is it? I don't know.
Absolutely. I'll let Leslie talk about Dr. Scollins, the data strategy obviously is something that is mentioned in the plan, and that is absolutely a collaboration between Dr. Scollins and all of our principals working with our data specialists to create these data teams. So maybe you could speak about that a little bit.
And one of the things that we're starting to do, and I can't remember if I mentioned it at our last meeting, that we're working with a consultant who's helping us look at MCAS data. And so that's kind of the beginning of what the process looks like, and that will then move over to all the other areas that people want to collect data. But, we'll use MCAS as that first kind of teaching point for us to look at data, and then if it's ELA, math, like if you want to get a broader picture of a student, I think that's kind of things that we've talked about, how we're going to collect that, how we're going to use it effectively.
Yeah, it'll translate into some data dialogues and how we conduct data dialogues. Actually, working with Principal Mills in a previous job, he's very astute with data dialogues and something that we're going to be moving toward here.
Okay. So this goal 3, identify and articulate tiered support systems and resources for academic, emotional, and behavioral needs. I know this is in our strategic plan. Where are we and what will the work look like?
We're in the middle of it.
Like last year some work was done, is that correct? Or?
Oh yeah, no, it's been a project since I've started.
Okay.
And it began, at least with my involvement, at the high school level by getting the department heads together to articulate what we already do. So, you know, what are the general good teaching practices that are available to all kids? What happens when kids struggle? What are the different vehicles in the different departments? What other resources do we need? And so that, you know, that some of that is published on the district site as part of the DCAP, right, the district curriculum accommodation plan. Some of it has evolved with the Massachusetts model, and so what started as academic interventions has now grown into academic and behavioral interventions, and that is a constantly evolving process, just like curriculum. And we're right in the thick of it. So do we do it? Yes. Do we need to continually look at what the needs of the kids are, what the resources we need are, and how we're going to deliver them most effectively? Yes. And
so when you have tiered support,
yep.
you need some kind of way of assessing who's in what tier.
Right.
So is that, I think that was the work that was done last year, right?
We've been doing that for a lot of years. So at the high school level, we do that every week. So, for example, we bring in, at the beginning of the year, we bring in every transfer student to our list of kids. We bring in every new student, every transfer, every kid that was on the list from the year before, and specifically what the concerns were, so that they're on our watch list. And then between guidance, the adjustment counselors, the school psychologist, the administration, depending on other people, our METCO coordinator, our nurse, the Bright coordinator, we're keeping an eye on how these kids are doing. We're getting feedback from teachers on where kids are potentially falling down. We're trying to zero in on whether that is one class, whether it's multiple classes, whether it's related to something that is happening in the home that's finding its way into school, and then working as a team to figure out, all right, here's what you think we're looking for, here's the information that we need, here's the strategy we're going to try, we're going to monitor them for a couple of weeks, come back and make a decision as to whether or not we're going to keep it, change course, escalate it into tier 3, or do something different.
So your goal is to sort of figure out more resources than...
The goal is to solve the problem as quickly as we can, right, and zero in on what exactly it is. So for some kids, it's particular to a specific subject. It's a math problem that we can get peer tutor, extra help, whatever. Maybe an online math program or something like that. You know, one of the things that our math department is working on right now is an online suite of instructional courses similar to like a Khan Academy, but for courses like, you know, pre-calculus and trig that we're teaching, pushing out, so if the kid misses for a couple of days because they have mono, they can catch up on their own if that's something that they want to do. And it's been pretty well received. So we're kind of building that suite up as a set of like tier 2 interventions for particular kids.
That's great.
I'm going to say also from a district point of view, as this has been expansive for some years, you can look back at data-driven decisions like Bright.
Yeah, Bright was a programmatic.
Gosnell, the adjustment counselor that the Laurie Dolan, that position. We're also looking at really tightening up and analyzing our child study process across the whole district moving into next year. So it's kind of shifting at, beginning to look. We have a real wealth of expertise in RTI in our district, including 3 folks who are doing or have done their doctoral work on that. So and some amazing people in those areas to provide support. So it's a great opportunity for us, and it ties right into that goal. It really does. But so you're going to see that all over the place in the next 2 years. Really tightening up that process to give us better data to make some of those decisions.
Even things like Learning Ally, several years ago we were able to zero in on reading deficiencies, right? So we had a population of students that didn't qualify for IEPs or 504s, but that needed audiobooks, and we were able to get some resources to get them in. We had one girl in particular who was taking AP US History, was working with one of the teachers. It was identified that she potentially had a reading disability. We get some audiobooks, worked with the publisher, and she ended up doing great. You know, it was just finding that right combination to allow her to be successful in the course, because intellectually she was able to do it, but she was just struggling with the mechanics of the actual reading.
Do you mind if I ask two more things?
Go ahead.
Two more things. It says train athletic captains and coaches to be active, up standards, and uphold values of the school.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that, and why is that? Like is that available to everybody, or?
Well, that one's available to captains. You know, are we trying to do it with everybody? Yes. You know, we're trying to articulate what the school is about, right? What are the values that we hold collectively as a community, as a school community, and then do we live those? And one of the biggest bodies that we have that should be held to a higher standard because of the fact that they're elected captains are our athletic captains. So Steve Rotundi, the athletic director, is holding bi-weekly, every 2-week meetings with the Captain's Council to talk about the dynamics of the team, what's going on in the school, how they can be actively supporting the kids who need a voice and be that voice.
Is the Captain's Council the captains themselves?
It's all of the captains. For
All of the captains, okay.
sports, yeah.
So it
But we also
includes-
work through
it
National Honor
includes
Society,
all
we work through student government,
Yeah.
so it's not limited to them.
Yeah,
You know,
that was
the
my
activity that we
question.
have coming up with Challenge Day is the entire senior class. So we're doing it in different pockets, but you have to zero in on specific groups and kind of use the people that are influential with those groups, as opposed to just having a blanket, you know, here's something for 500 kids. Because those vehicles are the things that matter. You know, if the coach says, we need a clean cafeteria, sometimes they listen to the coach more than they listen to the principal, you know?
And that ties really closely into athletic director Rotundi's goals as well.
Yep.
Right, right. My question, do you mind if I just say
Yeah,
again that,
jump.
because it was on the
Yep.
same topic, and I think you just mentioned it, was about the other student leaders in the school, whether it's
Yeah.
extracurriculars or student government or whatever. They're part of that training, I would assume, and they're advisors as well.
In different ways. So it's different kinds of trainings, but it's the same kind of conversation. What is it that we're about?
Yeah.
And what are the things that we do? And do the things that we do, our activities reflect what we're all about or
Right.
not? And if they're in conflict, we need to really think about that.
Yeah.
You know? And that's been really interesting with things like student council when it comes to things like the homecoming court, or, you know, historically the graduation robes and what colors those are.
Mhm.
And what, you know, blue and white really represents, and if it's exclusionary or not. And there've been some really interesting conversations. The kids want to have them, you know. But it allows a vehicle for them to kind of affect some change, which is a little bit of what we're in the business of, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I have one sort of, and it's my last comment. I love the plan. I think you've done a really good job really thinking about things that are going to make a difference and are going to make the school better. I think it's great. I think there's the beginning of the school improvement plan. I don't know whether all students will, and I don't know where that came from, or whether you're using an existing plan. And sometimes when you're looking at the goals, my point is that sometimes I think you have to stand back and think about your mission.
Mm-hmm.
And my concern is that when I was reading it and it said all students will write and speak clearly, factually, persuasively, and critically in standard English, I'm not sure that that's inclusive for maybe students with learning disabilities.
Mm-hmm. So I agree with you. The core values and beliefs predate me. They were developed in like 2011, 12 by the faculty. I don't think the faculty and I don't think the students can articulate them. And we're in the process of redoing them. Yeah.
And I also think these are in the frameworks and in the standards. So I think that when it comes to academic goals, we've got the Massachusetts frameworks,
Mhm.
but really, our schools should be an inclusive environment. So-
No, I agree with you. I don't love them. I don't disagree with all of them, I don't agree with all of them, but I don't love them. I think it's an antiquated model that was kind of pushed on people by NEASC, and NEASC has shifted. So that now the model is the vision of the graduate at graduation, which we should start the process of articulating what our vision is and what our graduates look like and redo it. But in the absence of that, this is what we got.
So maybe we could work on that this year.
That's one of the rules, yep.
Thank you.
And what does it take to make a change?
It's more of a process than you think.
Okay.
You know, Dr. Scollins and I attended a conference on what that process looks like. It's a very different model than what it was before, but I think it's no different than articulating what your 5 or 6 buckets of the strategic plan are going to be like. You know, you kind of start with a brain dump. What is it that we're trying to produce? Then you categorize them, then you prioritize them, and then you have to continually expand your circle. So what might start with a leadership team goes to a faculty, goes to parents, goes to students, and there's a lot of people. So, you know, it's a year-long process to come up with basically a 1-page sheet that says, this is what we're about. But if you do it right, everyone should be able to articulate what it is that a graduate looks like from K to 12. So I'm kind of looking forward to it, because I'd love to see what the philosophical differences or similarities are and what would come out, and then how much the kids are really going to embrace that. If it isn't owned by everybody, it's just a piece of paper, which I think was kind of the fault of some of the prior models from NEASC, which NEASC would acknowledge. I'm not talking bad about NEASC. They've said it. You know?
Right. Well, that was, thank you for that.
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing what you do.
Me too.
I had a couple of comments or questions. So on goal 1 on communication,
Mhm.
Just at a top level, like, can you describe the breadth of communication? Because that's such a big word. Like, when you say develop communication strategy,
Mhm.
like from the minute to the grand kind of communications.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, you want to develop a series of kind of vehicles, first of all. So you need to identify who you need to communicate with, and you need almost a framework for what needs to be communicated when, because some of it can be complicated, right?
Mhm.
You have an issue that happens in school that is a discipline issue that's protected by FERPA, so you can't publicly acknowledge it.
Right.
But people are talking about it. So how much can you say? When should you say it? At what point is the threshold crossed where you need to make a kind of mass communication, and what's the appropriate vehicle for doing that? So there's that kind of level of it.
Yeah.
There's things like the structures themselves. So I started a Twitter account. I'm not much of a Twitter person, but I do it. I get a kick out of it. It's fun. Whatever. You like this stuff, right?
Yeah, I like this stuff, yeah.
So there's that for like the quick windows into what we're doing.
Yeah.
There's the newsletter, which is a different kind of
Yeah.
vehicle for
Yeah.
pushing things out. There's a newsletter for faculty for kind of those weekly communications to the parents every couple of weeks, the faculty every week, Twitter's every day, every couple of days, twice a day,
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
So there's that kind of constant rolling, like, does everybody know what they need to know
When
they need to know it in as much detail as we can potentially provide? That's kind of the communication strategy. And a little bit of an effort, at least in the beginning, to, I guess, overdo it.
More is more.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, because, you know, one of the things is, you know, we have Blackboard, which is great communication, but if you're getting a Blackboard 5 times a day from
Yeah.
different people, at some point you stop paying attention to Blackboard.
Right.
So there's a little bit of a balance as to, you know, when do we make an emergency phone call versus, you know, an email versus a tweet versus whatever, or back stuff, I guess, in the elementary. So that's all kind of part of the communication strategy. But at the end of the day, I think, you know, I'm going to work with the school council, and we're going to work as a leadership team to develop a survey to say, you know, are you getting what you need? Do you feel like you're in the know? What are we leaving out? And what do we need to do differently? The kids have already told me that Twitter is not the right vehicle, Instagram is the right vehicle, except that I would argue that kids aren't the audience for a lot of it.
Yeah.
So,
there's also, deeper level vehicles to engage the community, to recruit volunteers for things.
Yeah.
We're doing lots of that. You saw that with Credit for Life.
Yeah, bringing some people into the
Yeah.
school and giving them a role for sure.
There's resources for parenting even that the school, we have through Safe Harbors, Diana Clark
Yeah.
coming
Yeah.
to speak.
Yeah.
So there's a deeper level of that. Obviously engagement that you have communication happening in your PSO meetings. So there's deeper levels in that regard too that I think are broader that Principal Scott and team are doing as well. That you might not see right away, but they're there and they're deep. And I
And
think
social media communications are the easiest and the most broadly effective. But I don't know that it's the vehicle that we ultimately want to encourage. So the face-to-face stuff, there's a real difference between a face-to-face conversation versus blasting something out on social media. So I'm really trying to encourage the face-to-face conversations between kids, with kids and teachers, parents and teachers, parents and administrators, because there's just a different element to it that I think is really instructive.
and your collaboration with the community, like groups like CSCR, and those are all deeper modes of communication than just the Facebook or the Twitter or the Instagram
Right.
that you're certainly doing. So there's that. I always look at that. People forget that's really the deeper communication.
Yep.
And I had another question on goal 2, on the second bullet point, the action plan, the partnerships with community organizations. Would you ever at some point also consider the private sector
Oh yeah.
for some, opportunities for kids?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the challenge with partnerships and internships is more practical than anything else. So, a lot of schools have community service programs, and I used to run one at Catholic Memorial, and Jack Buckley used to do a version of one here.
Yep.
And the problem is that the substance of the work isn't always there. So it's great to have an internship at the police station, but you can't really chase the bad guys. You end up washing cars sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's not always the best use of it.
Right.
If you're trying to do it within the confines of the school schedule, it's nice to have 90 minutes where you can run down the street and work at the Historical Society for an hour and come back. But with a rotating block, it isn't always the most practical thing too. So I think the challenge is, and this is what I'm working with Jack Buckley a little bit on right now, is, is there a model that we can create that provides real world problems that kids can use their skills, potentially use the resources at school, whether it's a faculty member or the research resources or whatever, that maybe transcends the bounds of the school schedule and provides us a little bit of flexibility. And I think we're getting closer.
Oh, good.
I think the block itself has enough flexibility built in that you can do it with a certain group of kids and still meet all your academic requirements. I think there's an element of thinking outside the box that you can potentially pilot. It's a little bit too soon to jump in the pool on that.
Yeah.
I'm only a couple months into it, so
Yeah.
I don't want to bite off more than I can chew.
Yeah, understood.
But the
Yeah.
prospects are there.
Yeah.
And, when you say partnering with the private sector, like NOAA, even though, as a private sector organization, was thrilled with the work that those kids did, finds it meaningful for what they are trying to do. And what I realized in that kind of presentation by the kids is that we can provide all kinds of free research to organizations that our kids benefit by doing, and their organizations benefit by. So all of the environmental stuff that Coach A is trying to do, the stuff that Patty Thompson's been trying to do, the stuff that Jack Buckley's been pushing, all of that research, all of that hands-on stuff. Paul and I were talking about it before the meeting, having a farm to table, cafeteria, compost, it's real education and valuable. And we just have to figure out the right model. But yes, I would partner with anybody who's an honest partner and meets a core check and all that.
Jen hit on the athletic captain question. Goal number 5. Departmental scorecard. I haven't heard that term before.
It's a little bit of a throwback to like a 1980s model financial scorecard concept that didn't quite work out. But the philosophy is maybe my own verbiage, but I like it. It's coming up with frameworks so that you figure out the 5 or 6 things that really drive the organization, how to measure them in a way that it almost reads like a financial statement, where you're not pouring through piles and piles of data. You got a pretty good snapshot, and those are the big drivers that you can delve into if you want to, but you know what the metrics are. Some of it is hard data like MCAS, SAT scores, college acceptances. Some of it I think is softer data like the culture and inclusion surveys, some of our SEL work, figuring out if kids know what the safety procedures are comfortable, like coming to school, what our attrition rates are, but articulating what those are, and then constantly monitoring them on a regular basis so that you can make decisions. That's kind of what I mean by the scorecard. But
Those were all my comments and questions. Craig, did you have anything?
No, I think you guys hit on everything.
Okay. Paul?
Yes, first of all, I'd like to thank you for putting this together. Also, just for the audience, this is a plan from a lot of different folks, from teachers, students.
most of it's a school council driven.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's fantastic that
Yeah.
you have such a good, and to your point, it's so much better to be in person to see all these communications. I believe in communicating in person more than anything else. Second of all, like, explore creative process through arts, music, drama, and technology. And what are some of your limitations, being such that we're in such a small school, to be able to offer these programs, such as, like, I know our debate club, we don't really even have a home court. Is that true? Like
We don't have a lot of home debate meets.
Okay.
I
And
don't
that's
know.
just an example.
Yeah, I
of,
don't know
like-
off the top of my head why we don't. I don't know that there's necessarily a reason. I think the difficulty that you have with any institution, but in particular a small school, is resources.
Right.
I don't know that we're resource deficient. I think we have a pretty robust health program. I think we have a pretty robust arts and music program. Are we going to be able to offer the full suite of courses? I think there comes a point in time where it becomes financially counterproductive to do that. And so you make concessions. We have a little bit of a higher class size in some of our electives. So what do you do with that? I was talking to one of the art teachers today who's got 32 in her drawing class or painting class, and the question was, well, there's only 2 electives offered that period. So is it a question of hiring more people, offering more electives? Is it a question of partnering with some outside organization so that kids who are taking art 2 or 3 times maybe have a better opportunity working in a like a CSCR model, or working with the teacher in an independent study? I think that's something worth exploring. So, I think there's a lot of different ways to cut it, and you just have to strike the right balance between being financially responsible and offering what you can with kids. Virtual classrooms are another way that we've tried to combat that.
That's great.
Those are pretty popular, but they're not for everyone.
Yeah, and I also love the idea of partnering with businesses. I think that was a big success with Hingham Savings Bank.
Right.
Doing the financial, and to see more of that is fabulous.
Yeah.
I
So
like
we had
that.
one student who just worked on pulling that together.
Yeah, that's
And,
great.
organizing an event brings in all kinds of skills that are artistic, that are logical, that are social in terms of the outreach that she has to do, and organizing it and all that stuff. So, that was a good way for some student agency in that project too.
Great. This is great. Thank you.
Good. Thanks.
Thanks very much. It's excellent, Brian. Thank you.
So now I'll invite Principal Mills to come on up. I should say that one of the things you'll see as we move forward into our improvement plans for next year is you'll see some uniformity, not only in our format, which will be the same across the district, but you'll see that we'll be paying really specific attention to make sure that we have all of the elements that are required of these plans from the DESA, just to make sure that, because in the legislation they really do set out the required elements. So I hopefully you'll see the same richness in these plans. but that you'll see it in a way that is more uniform across all the schools. We think that's important, and that we do make sure we have all those elements. So this work we'll do, and then it will translate into the councils. Principal Mills was thrust into a unique situation where he has a brand new school who didn't have its own improvement plan. His school had an action plan, which of course he inherited and has taken forward. So much of our suggestion to Wade, and thank you for doing that again, was so that Principal Mills could get his feet under him with his team. But having said that, it is new. So this is this plan, you'll see, has some differences from the high school plan, which was really formally articulated. But there's a lot of potential in here, and Jennifer, you will see the action plan ringing through this.
I worked on the
Yes.
mission and vision
So
statement,
you'll
and
see
I
that.
realized that these
Yeah.
things take time to
That's
do.
good. Yes. So thank you for that. So I'll turn it over to Principal Mills.
Yeah, so as Dr. Sullivan said, this is a product of the evolution over the last 3 or 4 years of the work that was done, the self-study, the NELMS visit, and the work that was done afterwards. In fact, an incredible amount of work went into the action plan. So it was kind of fortuitous where the middle school is new as the middle school, and it didn't have essentially an improvement plan unto itself going into this year, that we were able to look back at the action plan and use that as the backbone for moving forward. It's only logical because we're only in the middle of the 3 years for the action plan. So with the school council, we reviewed the action plan, and as opposed to looking at possibly an improvement plan that's made up of 10 steps, 10 unique goals, we took a step back. We looked at what had been accomplished, and there were some noteworthy things like work on the transition of fifth graders into the building and 8th graders out of the building. Some of the work that had been done around teaming. We realized that some of the stuff had already been done, so what we did is we took the target areas: curriculum, communication, communication, staff development, and culture. And we used that as our organizing scheme. And then out of the remaining action steps, basically put them under those umbrellas, in those buckets, so to speak, to create a plan for this year. So as you look at it, there really are 4 goals, but each one is one of those original target areas, and it's been fashioned into a goal for this year. The alignments to both the strategic plan and the action plan are noted, and then the action steps come directly out of the middle school action plan. So, as you said, the first goal is around communication. Our goal was to create 3 communication vehicles for staff and families for greater communication and increased involvement. And that includes things like greater use of social media, opportunities to bring speakers in, certainly opportunities to celebrate kids with our parents, and then just basically an overall increased communication so parents and community know what's going on every day at the middle school.
Principal Mills is responsible for bringing the S'more newsletter to our district. So if you like that, you can thank him. If you don't like it, you can blame me.
No. Second, really importantly, the second goal is around culture, and that's continuing to develop a unique and supportive middle school culture. And we've already begun a lot of those conversations with our staff. One of them actually consider a logo mascot that aligns with our vision. Working through the student council, we've already created a logo. It's the CMS. That's actually the 3 nautical flags.
That's cool.
It was kind of articulated by our 8th grade special ed teacher with input from students and faculty. So it was really neat. And with the student council, we do have insignia gear that we're going to make available to families that they can order and get back in time for the holidays. So you'll see us at like the musical weekend after this with a table, and so we're really excited about that. The third goal was around curriculum and learning environment, and some of the highlights included, really importantly, is developing a middle school vision, and as Principal Scott had talked about, a big piece of that, it's a huge lift, and it's something that we're going to be working on this year, is to bring faculty, students, parents to the fore so they can share their vision for what a middle school should represent, and also then how we can reflect that in the curriculum. And then lastly, staff development, and that's around both middle school appropriate curriculum, PBL and interdisciplinary opportunities, but also a greater use of Tier 1 supports within a tiered support system. So I'd say it's comprehensive, but it's exciting, and like I said, we've already got out of the gate on a lot of it, and we just look forward to this year and continuing to develop these things. And really, it was so fortuitous once again, because the action plan really was so well done that it really gives us a great roadmap for building the school.
Questions? Any other questions?
I had a question on, so it's on page 5. And I always feel like I don't have a good idea of this, but so additional adjustment counselor or social worker, and request an additional guidance counselor. Can you just give me a little sort of background around that? And
I can a little.
Yeah, yeah, they come off the action plan. These were steps that were in the action plan. I know from the time I've spent in the school, additional support for students, emotional and therapeutic support, is so badly needed. We do have an adjustment counselor who's scheduled through the IEP process with special ed students who are...
I'm sorry.
Yep.
I feel like I don't... So there is an adjustment counselor now at the middle school,
Yes, there is.
designated solely for the middle school?
Yes.
And this would be an additional adjustment counselor?
Yeah.
Okay.
So these were, because Principal Mills took them off of the action plan. The reason they were put on the action plan was because of the NELMS report. These are NELMS, if you, I know you know this,
Yeah.
but these are
Right.
the NELMS recommendations.
Okay.
And I think what
Gotcha.
Principal Mills, and correct me if I'm words out there, what you're finding is that was an accurate recommendation.
Oh, it's completely.
Yeah.
We do have a guidance counselor. She teaches, she essentially is like a 0.4 teacher, so she's only 0.6 guidance counselor.
Right.
Our adjustment counselor is, 110% of her time is dedicated to providing services that are articulated on IEPs. It's a legal
Right.
requirement. When we do have kids that are in crisis, and this generation experiences great anxiety, and they need a lot of strategies and opportunities to learn coping mechanisms, and we don't always have somebody available between, like I said, the guidance counselor is not really, she's really a 0.6 guidance counselor, and the adjustment counselor is fully booked. They're always willing to jump in and help out, and it's every day it's all hands on deck. And even today I met with a student in tears and her mom going through quite a bit, and we had to work with them for a while until our adjustment counselor had like a small window to become available. So the NELMS report, even though it was written 2 or 3 years ago, was amazingly, it was great foresight. It was built into those recommendations.
And as we move into our budget discussions, that might
Yeah.
be something that we're promoting. Clearly, and I think the high school, similar circumstances where we're realizing through our analysis of our child study and what we need for tiered supports that these are needed. They're necessary really supports for kids.
And even the Bright program, which is mentioned, which is it's a great support. The Bright model really is based on having an academic liaison, somebody to work with the kids to help them transition, but also therapeutic support. And that's something we don't have now. And the academic liaison does her best, but it is missing pieces. We have kids who have been out of school for different reasons, and some of their needs are being met, and we do our best with the therapeutic piece. But I think there is a great need.
So the guidance counselor, you're thinking of full-time, and that person would be solely guidance, or would we have a teacher guidance split like we have now, or is there thought around that?
I think it could be discussed, because the teacher guidance piece, the value of the teaching is it's really in the parlance of like the tiered support. It's really a tier 2 intervention. It's a way to work with small groups and help them get what they need. And most of this generation, like I say, the coping mechanisms of prioritization, the ability to communicate. It's the things we know right now that's unique about this generation, whether it's caused by technology or other things. These are needs that these kids have. So additional opportunity to support them either individually or in groups, I think is really needed.
So that's fairly alarming to me. I'm wondering how quick would how quickly could we acquire an additional adjustment counselor from middle school? I'm assuming that, are we looking at the earliest that would be the 2020-2021 school year? I'm honestly asking this question because I think that, and I don't need to tell Principal Mills, that middle school was fairly, from an emotional perspective, I think a fairly critical age group. And that is something that if I was a parent at home listening to this right now, I'd be pretty concerned about the fact that we seem to be understaffed in a fairly important area. So I'm wondering what's the quickest turnaround we can have for something like that in terms of getting that additional resource into Principal Mills.
Well, I mean, I think it is something that we're going to have to bring up in our budget discussions. Sure. We're as we have a workshop scheduled with the committee, I know I'm sure you'll be hearing more from Principal Mills regarding that need. That probably is realistically the quickest way to do it. And one of the things about having a unique, centered middle school principal is that you're going to hear this advocating. And that's what we want. We want that strong advocating for what the needs are in the building. I know that Principal Mills and his team do a fabulous job in helping students who are of need. So I don't want to give the indication that anyone's being not serviced. However, I think as you mentioned, there's a deeper level of service that needs to happen. So I don't see, unfortunately, a quicker way to do that other than through our budget process that will be articulated this year.
Okay.
Well, and we did have in the budget process for this year, based off the Mills report, a deferred request for the guidance counselor.
Mm-hmm.
That was a recommendation, and then as we got through last spring, and the schools were separated, we actually was able, and the choice was made to fund an assistant principal instead of the guidance counselor. And so hopefully the assistant principal is supporting some of these needs as well.
Oh, she is.
Yeah,
wonderful.
so that was
She's
kind of
amazing.
the trade-off at the time, Craig, that the leadership team at the time said, an assistant principal can help support
That's accurate.
in the guidance, but it was, the assistant principal position was much more critical to the launch of a separate middle school than the guidance counselor at that time. So the guidance counselor is still on our deferred list. And so the process has anything that's deferred is the first thing that's looked at. Pie in the sky, if the Student Opportunity Act passes and there's additional funding from the state, guidance is one of the footnotes on that to have additional support from the state for state funding, and that the state recognizes that social emotional issues for local communities are quite significant, and so in addition to low-income communities and other supports that other districts need, but I noted that was one that
I agree. And to put a little question on it, I would say that the high school is also pressed for,
Yeah, I mean, historically, I would say that this is one of the positions that's been historically listened to and responded to. So this is my 8th year. 9 years ago, they contracted out between both schools one person. There was no full-time person. Then they got a full-time person, then they got 2 full-time people, then they added Gosnell, all within the span of about 8 years. So some of it is responding to the demographic changes and the needs, but it's escalating, and I think there's the triage piece of it, which is adding the services, and I think there's the preemptive stuff, which is some of what John's talking about with the guidance classes and some of the SEL work that we've done that will hopefully slow that pace down.
And I think to that point, Principal Scott, it's sort of an evolving area as well. It's being taken a little bit more seriously in these days than maybe yesteryear.
Yeah. So
that's another issue, and it sounds, at least it's comforting me to hear that there's obviously, and that wasn't to infer or imply that you weren't equipped to deal with anything, Principal Mills. I have complete faith in both of you, but I was just a little bit concerned. But it sounds like we have non-adjustment counselor resources that would be able to address any sort of issues like that, and are obviously very well equipped to do so as educators. So I think that's important for everyone to hear, and I think your explanation of our plan and dealing with that is a very good one. And also the backdrop to all of this, I think, is something important to realize that this is a new entity, a new structure, a new school.
Right.
So we're sitting here, and this is the reason you're sitting here, identifying these sort of issues. So I just sort of want to point that out, because from the perspective of, if I was sitting watching this thinking, okay, well, why is that the case? I just want to point that out, but I also want the information, and Alan, I appreciate the information you just gave me.
Well, the other thing I need to obviously note is how supportive the committee's been, because we were able to, first of all, get Principal Mills and Dr. Salas and a half-time nurse. I mean, we within a year's span. I mean, so the ability to foster and support this unique school is really we're very much in gratitude for that. So I want to just say that publicly too. So.
Thank you. But it's been a lot of blood, sweat, and tears over the last couple of years, and to have it all go for naught was not an option in my opinion. So, and I also, just on this same topic, we had last spring a presentation by Mr. McGowan, who's a high school guidance counselor, and he discussed how their job has evolved from scheduling a college application process into becoming part of the resources for SEL for our high school students, and the stress that that's putting on those two. So I think as we approach the budget process, I would expect both the high school and the middle school to have some articulation of needs in those two areas. And when we get there, to preempt typical questions will be caseloads, what are models in other districts, how does it look, so that when we go fight the fight, we have a lot of data behind us to support it, because as Patrick and Michael know, FTE increases are very challenging in town right now.
Yeah, I get it. Right.
Very challenging. So the more we have, the better fight we can make to support it.
I also think our Director of Student Services, Mary Buchanan, would be very willing, and I think it would be appropriate for her to update on our counselors across the district, what role they take, and get her view on where we are in terms of those needs.
Yes, I would agree.
That's very tied into her goals and her passion. So, Mary, if Mary's ears are perking up, volunteering, but she's already said she'd like to do that.
Yeah, I noted those two things at the stars. Let's see, goal 3, again, some more stars, or actually I put dollar signs. Augmentation of standing desk options, provided dedicated group workspaces with flexible seating options. Again, they're in your plan, so I would expect to see, in our budget workshop, like what that kind of looks like.
Yeah, and we've started working on it. Our 6th grade team has written grants for CEF and PSO to acquire a few more pieces to get a better sense of what might work and what might not work as a pilot. And then under Mr. McClellan's guidance, we did meet, we're going to begin meeting and create almost a vision for what would be the optimal, what's our vision for each teaching space, especially bearing in mind.
McMillan, I never
Oh,
called.
man, I'm sorry.
Right.
Yeah. I was wondering why I didn't
There's a
call
lot-
it.
there's a lot for us.
Yeah, you signed up for it.
Good job.
Yep, create a vision for, a teaching space that would, it's guided through universal design for learning principles, that, would accommodate the technology needs for instruction. And so, I said, we'll talk about augmentation, but we're not doing it haphazardly. We're doing it very systematically and exploring it. And the fact that the teachers have been great, assuming, leadership over that.
Which ones are currently any standing desks in them?
We do have, most rooms have a standing desk. The feedback I've received from teachers, they're great. One is kind of hard because it's a novelty.
Right.
2 or 3 would be optimal because then the one student isn't as stigmatized that might, really benefit from it.
That's right.
So that's, is they're looking at like grants, that's one of the things that they're looking at doing is how does it change when you've got several, rooms as opposed to one, or even a high table, like when you go to a restaurant and they offer you a high top. Is something like that better because now instead of having one person standing, it's like a table a little bit higher.
Would we ever get to a point where there'd be like half and half? I mean, I actually think it's a really awesome idea. I think that,
I know a classroom that just replaced them that everybody has a standing desk.
Yeah.
And they have actually a little bucket so the students can even put their things.
Mm-hmm.
Because the standing desks are the most popular piece of furniture in the room.
Right.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
So,
They're awesome.
I guess I go back also to Michael meeting with the principals and Leslie to really articulate the vision for a room, like to make sure that we're doing it in phases and that all of those things are really considered, so that we're not just getting the hot thing of the month, that we're really looking at building capacity and looking to sustain that going forward. But I think all those things are considerations. The way the desks can come together for flexible groupings,
Right.
I'm sure that's being considered.
Yeah,
So the driver for all this is because when we developed the capital plan, at least the high school, middle school, and Deer Hill all identified classroom furniture, student desks, chairs, and teacher desks and chairs as a need for replacement, at least within the next 3 to 5 years, if not sooner. And also the technology in the classrooms as well is something else we want to look at. So rather than just taking this and sort of doing a piecemeal and getting some chairs here and some desks there, we decided to take a kind of more strategic approach where we would set out a vision of what we'd like our classrooms to look like, and then work through and then come up with a plan to work towards it.
I think we talked about just doing one classroom over, like it's kind of like the hotels. They do one.
That was what you guys
hotel-
said today.
Yeah, like Hotel Impossible, which was.
They were right on that today.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic because it basically shows the model of what it would look like in each room, and then you can have time to like adjust it as needed, and then come up and formulate a plan for a long vision plan. So you don't just order a bunch of desks; they come and you don't really know how to.
And have the
I think that's a fabulous
teacher
idea.
student.
Teaching student
Yeah.
input.
Yeah.
Because we don't want it to be, I think it's Brian was saying, we don't want it to be top down, we want it to be driven through what teachers and students actually need in the classrooms. So we have, we're getting ahead of ourselves, we literally met at 3 o'clock this afternoon.
That's great though. Hey, it's progress.
Right,
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
and a big piece of that too, like you say, I absolutely agree about faculty and student input, but also we have to sort of plan and provide for how this might impact instruction and would support the teachers' needs,
That's right.
because teaching a room full of standing children is not necessarily what they're used to. They're used to a very old model, a traditional model where every kid's sitting in a desk and they're kind of lined up in rows. So it's a complex but really exciting endeavor that we're undertaking.
Yeah.
And Paul, did you have any questions?
Yeah, first of all, thank you. I'm so pleased.
at a grade school council.
Yes, yes. The other thing I was going to ask you is just a pilot additional lunch social programs for students. I think that's a great idea. I think children have an opportunity to break bread. And do you want to expand a little bit on that? Like, talking about a pilot program?
Yeah, we'll look at, well, actually, opportunities to find different places for kids, especially there's some kids, and we're back to the SEL issue, for whom like the noise of the cafeteria is just just too much.
Right.
Even when, just the regular sound, but for lunch, and I really believe lunch should be nourishing both physically but also emotionally. That's one of the reasons that we're a no phone school, no phone at lunch.
Right.
And I've gotten good feedback from kids who say now they go to lunch, they do just look at each other now.
Right.
They just talk, they just laugh, they engage with one another. But we're looking at how we could provide for kids a quieter space, yet still be supervised, without feeling stigmatized.
Right.
But that's what we'll be looking at.
Also, too, is the fact that when students sit with round tables is more efficient because they can face each other. Some of the other tables are kind of like the long tables. It's kind of how prisoners sit.
Yeah.
I don't want them to do that. So the idea is to keep them in a round table so they can socialize. Like we're all sitting in a round area. It's like the round table. So
It's
let's
funny,
see a little bit more. of
just
that.
by observing, because I'm in every day
Yeah.
during break and lunch, the long tables get used quite a bit. And it's fun. It's such an experiment in sociology where kids go to the same tables every day.
Yeah.
But we also limit the number of kids at a table so it doesn't get overcrowded and become
Right.
unsafe or just stressful. So the long table seats 16, 8 on a side, and that way kids have some room. But they do sort of, every day they don't sit around with the same people on either side. They sort of mix it up at the table, so the round is more conducive, but a lot of times when they plunk down with a buddy, their other buddies are down here, and they will talk to them, but there is a lot of that face-to-face, and that's why we don't want it to be crowded, because at the beginning of the year, before we asked them to keep their numbers at a table at a maximum, they would be so crowded that you couldn't turn and look at the person next to you. So now they do have the room. But it's an important part of the experience we want kids to have at middle school and learn the appropriate way to socialize, like breaking bread, and be able to engage. And to me, it's so important that just at one point of the day, just put the books away. If sometimes a child will bring a laptop or their Chromebook to do work, and we'll ask them usually, is it something you have to? Let's close it and eat first, talk to your friends, and then if you need to leave 5 minutes early, that's fine. But it's an important part of the day.
Yeah.
I have 2 more questions
Yeah.
just on that same topic. There was a point in time where kids, middle school kids, could go outside, run around for 5 or 10 minutes during lunch. Do they still get to do that?
Not regularly, but where Dr. Salas and I are talking about it, there was a day where, I forget, because of an assembly or something, we had the whole school in the cafeteria,
Yeah.
and they all had the opportunity to eat, and then we realized it's really too many people. So we, once they were cleaned up, we brought them out on the field. They really liked it.
Yeah.
So we're looking at ways to build it in where, when they leave the cafeteria clean after break, when it's, we don't want to penalize them and take it away, but we're trying to use it as an incentive for some of those, the behaviors, the pro-social behaviors we want them to develop, like cleaning up after themselves. But bringing them outside was so fun. So yeah, we would like to get back to that, weather permitting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of think it's like recess. I mean,
Yeah.
I think these kids are still, because you have the gamut from the 6th graders to the 8th graders, that a little 10-15 minutes
Right.
outside or physical activity can rejuvenate them for the balance of the school day. And so then my second question is, and Brian, I apologize if this is sacrilegious, but we do have the Skipper Cafe, which has long been a senior tradition to have lunch there, but the middle school and the high school don't overlap. Would that be considered a quiet zone for lunch?
It
to use
could,
that?
and once again, we don't want kids to feel stigmatized.
Right.
The other piece we were looking at is the teacher cafeteria, the little teacher lunchroom
Yeah.
is so rarely, it's very lightly,
Yeah.
if ever, used.
Yeah.
Teachers usually bring their lunch and they usually eat with each other,
Mhm.
and they don't come down, so that would be the other thing, because they could kind of
Mhm.
slip in there. We could easily supervise them, and then they could go back to dessert, and without it, being disruptive or, like I say, stigmatizing.
Also have that internal courtyard that we really don't utilize very much for much. And just
Yeah,
think
our
about
STEM
how-
class has used it.
It's true, because the
Yeah.
gardens, yeah.
But underutilized, though.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
But I totally agree with you. Even during the day, if I have the opportunity, I'll cut through that lower courtyard, and
Yeah.
it just wakes you up and makes you feel
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
It's just good for the kids.
You got, to Alan's point, a lot of the vitamin D for the day too, getting that natural sunlight,
Yeah.
which fights depression.
And they sit a lot.
Little
I mean,
stuff
they're
like
all
that.
day
They sit a
sitting,
lot.
so
Yeah.
the opportunity, and once you get lunch, tends to be sitting, so the
Yeah.
opportunity to get up and stand up is good.
Yeah, and then the use of the cafe or wherever for quiet time. I mean, the trains do it. They have quiet cars.
That's right, yeah.
Because some people just prefer to have a little not solitude, but a little peace and quiet.
Yeah.
During the day.
And and my experience has also been in previous positions that different times during the year you'll have kids coming back from concussions and they can't go
Right,
into
right,
So
right.
you do need that quiet spot. Like, knock on wood, we haven't had any students yet this year with concussions, but that tends to be a real need as well.
Yeah. Can I ask one more question?
Of course,
I'm
yeah.
sorry, guys. A little off topic, but you
That's
brought it
okay.
up with the no cell phones in the middle school.
Yeah.
And this is really for Brian. Sorry. The
But he was done.
the DETA teachers were on strike for a couple of days 2 weeks ago. And one of the things that they wanted was a district-wide policy about cell phone usage for all students. Because they found that the individual management of cell phone usage by classroom was tough. And I'm wondering, Brian, if you have any thoughts on A, our student usage and how teachers are managing it, and B, what you think about maybe following the middle school model of no cell phones.
I think it becomes hard to regulate the older kids get.
Yeah.
And the variety of things that they're managing. So, Torrance Sweeney did an experiment in his class where he had every kid take out a cell phone and put it on the desk. 90-minute period. How would we, 3 periods a day of the teachers, and he said, I just want to put some whiteboards up and tally what you get for messages. So, text messages, Snapchat,
ding, ding,
Instagram,
ding, ding.
ding. And if I remember correctly, the overwhelming majority of students were getting messages from parents. So that's been my historical reality, even going back to my former school, where the people who fight it the most are the parents. And so it almost becomes like, I don't know that we have the resources to manage it. I don't know what the proven benefit would be for the amount of hours that it takes to do it. And the older they get, you get kids talking to coaches, you get kids who are doing some really legitimate things on their own time. There's always a downside to it. And so my attitude has always been, I do think the teachers, I think competent teachers can manage a classroom. I don't know the specifics of the Dedham situation, so I'm not saying that they were incompetent or they couldn't. I haven't really heard from teachers that it's a real problem. And when it does kind of arise, kids text them they're going to meet up in the bathroom, for example. People put in some strategies, like the freshmen a couple of teachers put in the shoehorn, so they drop them in class with the lane because the freshmen can't really handle it. The seniors in Jason McCabe's class got to put their phone on the desk and set the timer so that when they go to the bathroom, they come back, they record how long they've been gone. And that seems to be effective. We've had some people put in, you need to turn in your phone before you go to the bathroom, and found that kids were bringing burner phones. So it's like, how much are you really going to, chase the
academic time?
And with only 2 people in the cafeteria, or 1 person in the main cafeteria, walking table to table to police everybody's cell phone, for all of the good that it might do getting kids to talk face to face, it erodes the trust that they're gonna have in the person who's constantly nickel and diming them about something that might be legitimate. So, there are no plans right now, but it doesn't mean that it couldn't come up.
And let's not forget, there's a potential disservice you're doing for them, because we are always talking about training our kids for after high school, right? College, professional work. So we're monitoring heavily cell phone usage, and then they go to college, they're absolutely able to use it, and then they're like, oh, this is awesome. They're not paying attention in class. They're like, this is great, Scott's been over my shoulder taking this thing from me, and meanwhile they're having trouble, academically in school. So you got to remember that as well. I think.
I don't have a point either way. A personal perspective either way. I just thought it was interesting what you said. Patrick and I were talking about it. I mean, like we're all on our phones too much, and
I do think that it has a damaging effect, and I think that even you look at schools out in Silicon Valley where people who own the tech companies don't allow the devices in the school. I think there's something to be said for that. I think there's a little bit more research that needs to be done. But I think it's going to tie into the social emotional wellness. And I think there's a good case that can be made for the reduction of technology and reduction of distraction. It's just it's a larger conversation that I think will kind of we'll have to come to a collective understanding of what that is and whether it's good for kids. And I think we had somebody we were talking about today. We for a variety of reasons collected cell phone and it's not a improper disclosure. There's a dozen kids who turn their phones in on the way into school, and his behavior over the last couple of weeks has been great because it isn't distracting.
And it is probably, to your point, a gradual thing. We're freshmen. You don't want them to go reverse cold turkey from no phones in class to complete liberty.
A lot of the social media sites, although this is a total joke because we all know kids use it earlier than they should, but they actually have age limits on when you can appropriately access it without permission of a parent. They say. And all of them are above the middle school age. I mean, it is an appropriate measure for middle school. I would say that society, in terms of society, you're going to see more and more technology-free movements. I think you were alluding to it. You're going to see more and more schools looking at technology days when you don't have cell phones. Just for that social emotional wellness component. And that is in some ways teaching kids about time after high school, because what you're really teaching them is that there are times when you have to have your own time to socialize with other people, to enjoy the outside, and you don't want to be totally governed by your phone all the time. So I think you got to see that more and more. I think it's going to happen in our schools too. I think I think Mr. Sweeney was onto that when I spoke with him about it. I think you're going to see that as a trend.
I mean, I think one of the things that we're finding right now is that it was only a couple graduating classes ago that somebody in the class said, when we were in middle school, phones weren't even really a thing. Like they didn't, the iPhones didn't exist. Now all of a sudden they exist. So as adults, at least for me, I'm finding how different it changes the work environment from 10 years ago in terms of being on a call, the expectation that, if you get an email at 9 o'clock at night about something urgent, you're going to get it and respond. It changes the work dynamic, it changes the family dynamic, it changes what the dinner table looks like. And as we're kind of figuring that out, as people with fully mature kids, we got a whole wave of kids who are coming in with the same habits, and it's doing a little bit more damage. So I think we're kind of on at the turning point of trying to figure out how good or bad this really is.
Thank you. Everybody else good?
Great.
Good.
Great. Awesome.
Great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're free to. Are we all set?
Yeah. Thank you.
They got a big day tomorrow.
Yeah. Have a great
Every day, right?
guys.
Thanks, guys.
See you in the morning.
See ya.
Thank you very much.
Do we have to vote these in?
You do.
We do.
Oh,
Okay.
the voting you make.
Yeah. I'm sure it'll pass.
That's all right.
My
No,
apologies. I should have.
No, Jen called me on it. Okay,
Yep,
so
that was
can I have
right.
a motion to approve the Cohasset High School improvement plan for the 2019-2020 season?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve Cohasset Middle School improvement plan for the 2019-2020 season?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
All right.
Good night.
Good to go.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys. Good night. All right, do that.
So, next item, if we're ready, right?
Yep.
Okay, is the calendar for the 2020-2021, it's gonna be hard to say all next year, school year. And this is not to be confused with the starting times calendar. This is the actual calendar. As you can see there, what you can't see is there were a couple of professional development days. We really looked at them to make sure that the professional development days we have in here are measured to our needs appropriately, always taking families into consideration too when we put them in particular places. The start day of after Labor Day is late this year coming up, but with the school start time changes, we made the determination not to forge forward with the thought of starting before Labor Day, which is often a thought when you have a late Labor Day. That may be something that we consider down the road as early as the year after next, at least thinking about that and talking about it. And of course, all of this is in conjunction with the association too. They're always considered and collaborated with on this. So it stands as not a radical departure from what we have this year, but with a couple of meaningful takeaways to make the year more seamless from a professional development standpoint. And so I presented for your consideration, questions, and vote inevitably.
Anyone have any questions?
I do. So I'm concerned that, with Labor Day being later, that we're running pretty late. And that if we have snow days, we're going to the 30th, which is fine, except that we could have more than that. And then I'm noticing that in April we have Good Friday off. I don't know that we always have Good Friday off. Maybe given the fact that Labor Day is as late as it is, could we consider having school that day?
On Good Friday? I don't know. I'd have to think about that. We've always had Good Friday off. I don't know that it's. So I just don't. I don't want to speak without researching it. I don't know. I mean, obviously, I know what Good Friday is and what it represents, but that day has always been considered a holiday off. I don't know what the process would be for not recognizing that.
Well,
I just don't know.
2 years ago when we had an incredibly snowy winter and we were really pushing the envelope on snow days, Good Friday did come up, and not only in Cohasset but in other districts, in terms of do we have school that day and save a day at the end, because you can't go beyond 30th of June contractually, right, with your snow days. So I know districts have in the past, and I don't know the process, but it has been conversation in the past, that in February or March would say, okay, well, we're gonna, and anyone who already had plans, like, this doesn't butt up against April break. Sometimes Good Friday would be right before April break, and so if it was going to be considered to have school that day, families who had plans, those students weren't marked as, weren't penalized for the absence.
Yeah, it doesn't at all. It's just,
so it doesn't
so
do
that would be a consideration if we did get tight on days.
Yeah. And then any snow day after April 1st, you don't have to make up. Is that correct?
So I don't know about. I thought it was June. I know it's in June. There's no. I thought it was June 1st.
No, I think it's.
Is it up to April? Was it that late? Is that really? We went through this last year.
We went through it last year.
So the reason I have to check. I thought it was June.
We looked at it last year.
I think it's any snow day after
April 1st. You
after
might
April
know.
1st, you don't have to make up.
So obviously we had the last day of school canceled, and there was some this past year, and there was some consideration for if we'd have to make up that day, and we were told by the DESE that we did not.
We did not.
And we could probably look it up, but then this.
So it's any days lost after April 1st.
Yeah.
You don't have to make up.
Very good.
As long as you've used your 5 schedules.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, is there any feeling that should be some discussion about starting before Labor Day?
So the reason I didn't push it is because of the school start time changes, and I thought it would be just a lot of changes for folks to be ready. I do believe that there's some passion out there regarding whether you start before Labor Day or not. I do believe that we will we'll rouse that if we start it, if we decided to go before Labor Day. Just to put it out there, I think there will be some. I know that there are some groups that are feel very strongly based on family trips and family vacations that starting before Labor Day is not a good idea. And then I know there are some folks who feel there is. I felt this year wasn't the year to rock that boat with all the boats we're going to be rocking with the other start time issue. That was my honest thought in not pushing this. I would respectfully, consider any of the committee's thoughts on that, but let me ask this: have we ever started before Labor Day in class? So I just want to put that out there.
Yeah.
It's a tradition change.
It's come up several times prior to me being on the committee, and there was never any appetite, like, no, school always starts after Labor Day. I mean, it was much more the sentiment and the tradition of it. And I think families have gotten acclimated to taking that last week in August as their vacation because all the summer activities have ceased. Recreation has stopped and sports camps and things like that don't happen. I feel from an academic perspective that a start before Labor Day will get much better quality time in the classroom than the fourth week in June. That's just my personal feeling. I think kids are more geared up to go back and jump in, and by this time in June, they're kind of tapped out. But that's just my opinion.
There's a lot of power to starting before Labor Day from a teaching perspective. Having been a principal, being able to do the orientation activities with kids before Labor Day, having a break for Labor Day, and then coming back and hitting the ground running. There's some power in that. That wasn't ignored, or it certainly was considered as we thought about it, and really just being incredibly transparent with you. The reason that I'm not advocating for it is because I recognize that people are going through an enormous amount of change with, in many ways, with many things. And I just didn't think it was wise after consulting with the team to push that this year, but it is for your consideration.
Well, to Alan's point, for us, everything stops at the end of July, like all the sports, and we do summer softball, and right around August is really good family time. So I think that's what people do think. It starts at the end of Labor Day. I know it's late.
I think in any case, you're absolutely right.
Which
Throwing too many things at
I'm just concerned.
Yeah,
insane.
I agree.
Crazy. So you have chosen wisely.
Yeah,
I
pick your battles.
So, maybe revisit this another time, and let's see if we can get the other things situated first.
I wouldn't argue against what you said, and I prefer to you guys if you had a different thought too. But I from an educational perspective, I can see its merits.
Yeah, it's the longest summer.
I'm just trying to
everything's
Can
timing.
we pick up another day? That's my only concern, is that with the 23rd, and then we're in a situation where we could really lose days.
Yeah. Well,
I don't.
Well, I think there's the opportunity to address Good Friday if we find ourselves in that situation.
Okay, that's a thought.
Well, yeah, that's a good idea. Because even if we have to find a day, I'm not a big fan of being a Christian. Good Friday is a very important day to us. That said, I'm sure that if it's
I mean, there have been districts that have done Saturday school, to make up for when we had all that snow. Was it 2 years ago or was it 3?
3 years.
3 years ago? I don't remember.
Sounds awful to me. I'm not even in school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Dr. Sullivan and I did have a conversation about this because I already stated my opinion. I'm not going to repeat it.
So if we vote on this, we can vote on it, but we can always adjust it as well, right? If something comes up?
I think once we set it, I think we can adjust it, but you'd have to vote on it and communicate it out to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, other than that situation with Good Friday when we had all that snow, don't have any experience in this district where changes to the calendar came about once it was set.
One thing to consider, of course, is the 23rd is late.
Yeah.
And then if we do determine we're going to start the next year before Labor Day, that is a very short summer.
It's a short summer.
So it would almost be good to get folks, if we're going to move in that direction, to get folks ready for that, that shift as early as possible, just to be thinking about our meetings going forward.
Well, it depends upon where Labor Day falls in 2021. I don't know.
That's true too. That's
What
true.
about,
I'm just, right, that, exactly.
what about like March 19th being a professional development day? I mean, is there any way to move that if we have a lot of snow? Or am I looking?
Well,
I mean,
I don't know. I don't know how that works contractually with our teachers, and also usually those full day professional development days are well planned ahead, and we're really looking to make those really well thought out. Usually it involves some speakers or some plans. It's not impossible though.
right, like it said, you
It's
could
not
always
impossible.
move that to the end of June.
I
we had to.
I don't know if it would require a side agreement with the association or not.
Okay. Just throwing it out.
But I don't think it's impossible.
What about Columbus Day? Everyone seems to have a problem with that these days.
What do you mean?
Well,
That's a
that's a
That's
federal
federal.
problem. I think you might have some grassroots movements by
Yeah.
some students to.
Well, I don't know. They're talking about Good Friday. I mean, that's an important day for some people.
I think you might be hearing more about the Columbus Day title.
Yeah.
I think we're going to have a winter without a lot of snow. And we're not going to have to worry about snow days. So.
All right,
Just
so
for
we'll see what
your
happens.
knowledge, Labor Day is the 6th.
Yeah,
in
the
2021.
2021, yeah.
All right, so we're gonna have a good long
So
summer.
that would
It's
be
late.
summer.
Okay, so
So
it
it's
won't be
late
that.
again, so it won't be so
Yeah.
bad. But
Unless
to your
you move it
point
to
though,
before.
it's kind of
Before, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
it's kind of the idea to start socializing it now. I know I've seen I've had 3 or 4 parents ask if the calendar's been published because they're trying to plan next
Yeah.
summer.
I would also have to survey and really talk to the association.
Right.
You have some right to be collaborating with us on this.
Yeah.
And I'd want to obviously tap into that. But my initial talks with them is that I think there's a contingent that would be very receptive to it, particularly as Labor Day has been.
Late, yeah. All right. So, do I have a motion to approve the draft calendar 2020-2021 as presented?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, one more just point of reference. I have determined the times for our parent forums for the
Okay.
the school start times. I mentioned I was going to do some forums
Yeah.
when I was instructed by you to take a look, and I haven't put those out there officially, but the PSO is actually doing that for me. The first meeting will be on Tuesday, the 12th of November at 9:30 a.m. This is the daytime one that I had promised. That'll be in the Deer Hill cafeteria. That'll be part of the Deer Hill PSO meeting, but all are welcome to attend that. And then our evening forum will be at Joseph Osgood School on Wednesday, November 13th. That'll be at 7 p.m. and that'll be in the Osgood cafeteria. And again, it's a part of the Osgood PSO meeting, but all are invited to that. And that was the suggestion.
Excellent. Okay, so next, we have approval of the warrant 20-08S. Can I have a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Go ahead.
Roll call.
Aye. Paul Kearney?
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
Aye, Ellen Mar.
Hi, Jen Madden.
Aye, Craig McClellan.
Signed. Okay, finance, Michael?
Right, so this is the finance report through to the end of October. So by now, just looking at the budget summary report, we have, if you compare this to last year, we had actually encumbered a lot of our district placements by this point in October. So in that regard, we're comparing more like with like. However, we have had one more payroll.
Prepaid period. Yeah, I know all about it.
We were just
Yeah.
one extra, so
Yeah.
before anyone had a heart attack.
Yeah.
It had to have been.
Yeah.
I know.
it's
The next
3%
one's in
over.
May, just FYI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it worked out because you get healthcare. So we didn't. So if you have 3 paychecks in a month, you get away. Well,
Is it-
except you get one without the
Oh,
healthcare
okay.
insurance deductions. So that's how it's managed.
For bookkeeping, is it better to pay?
Yeah, I know. I was like, oh.
For a book, I mean, I don't know if this matters or not, but if there's a book fee, would it be easy to pay 2 pay periods, like monthly, like the 1st and the 15th, so that you don't come up with that?
Yeah.
Because we've been, you know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah.
like, so you might want to just consider that because
It's actually said by the time. So
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Just throwing it out there.
Yeah. So once that's adjusted, once that's reflected, the percentage expended comes down to something more like 25%. So still a little bit above where we were at this point last year, but significantly so.
Yeah.
The other big change, I guess, is transportation as a percentage is up significantly. And that is partly because we decided to use a greater portion of the transportation revolving account because we were carrying quite a large balance there. So we had budgeted to use more of that to pay for transportation. So we have a smaller transportation budget here, which means as a percentage expenditure is higher.
So the operational portion is less, and
Than the
this
revolving.
expenditure reflects revolving.
Yes. Well, no, this just reflects. This just reflects the operating budget, but the budget itself is smaller. So you went from in 2018 it was 242.
Yeah, 42.
Sorry, in FY19 it was 300,000, but the FY20 budget was only 200,000. So as a percentage of that budget, we spent more. And the reason the budget is less is because we're using the revolving account more than we have.
But we also expended more dollars. So last year, through this time, and maybe it's a function of the pay period.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. We spent 73,706, and this year we're at 108. Is that just because there's an extra?
Definitely going to be a big chunk of that.
Or is that the lease maybe when we had? That's all right. You can get.
I would
That's all
say
right. You can
that-
get back to me.
The payroll will be a part of it, and
The lease payment would be the other.
There you go.
Okay.
Oh, I'm good, thank you, I'm good, thank you.
Yeah, let's make it sure.
so those are the
Stay
highlights.
hydrated at a time here.
Yeah.
You brought me
Yeah,
water.
So for me, the pay period, that's what I assumed it had to be because it
Yeah.
goes all personnel. lines.
Everything's higher, yeah.
Everything was higher. Yeah.
So any other questions about the report? Then in terms of the revolving grant summary, this one, there's a couple of deficits in the grant, and that's just because we have to, well, we spend and then claim reimbursement for these grants on a rolling basis. So sometimes the expenditure is just a little bit ahead of revenue. Except in the Safer Schools grant, that's all the other grants are federal or state grants where we get monthly allowed, we can request funds monthly. This Safer Schools grant, which is a one-off, it's a reimbursement grant, we expend it and then we seek
Are you-
reimbursement.
okay, and
There's
they-
2 opportunities to seek reimbursement, one before we had spent any money, and the next one is in December, so actually the end of December. So we've not quite finished this project yet. As soon as we have, we will submit the reimbursement request. But we may not get it until
We may not get it till when, I'm sorry?
the end of the financial, the end of the school, the calendar year.
Oh, end of the
Exactly,
calendar year.
Yeah. Well, actually, I don't know exactly when they'll submit payment, but when they'll give us our reimbursement requests have to be in by the end of December, and expenditure has to be done by the end of December. We're almost finished, and then we'll be reimbursed.
Okay.
That was the grant that,
Yes.
yeah,
So that's the one
okay,
we
in
got.
the spring, we
Yeah,
received
got
word about that, okay.
The cameras for so they've gone in and they've already proved very useful.
It's fabulous.
Yeah.
So much better.
Yeah.
Now, those are all for the high school, right?
These were all for the school and middle school.
Oh, and middle
Yeah,
school.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. Because I was going to ask, and I should know the answer to this question, how we are positioned with our cameras surveillance in the middle school. Because I know so much of the focus has been the high school and common areas and.
So after this, we're in a much better position. I
Okay.
think there's still, I haven't explicitly asked Principal Mills.
We can
what he'd
look,
like to
when
add.
we have maybe the budget and
We have a
finance.
couple of spots where, I know there's a couple of corridors we might still like to add.
We can go and look at that.
Oh,
when we
pretty
do-
good.
Either
Yeah.
the it would, I don't know if it'd be appropriate for safety or budget and finance, but something we
We
can.
also,
We'll walk up,
and we
yeah.
have maps as well, so you can see pretty clearly. There's a couple of corridors which we might still need to add a couple of cameras. So that's the,
So much better.
yeah.
Yeah.
Much safer.
Thank you.
And then looking at the revolving funds, school lunch is down significantly. However, that's because October revenue had not yet posted at the point in which this report was run. And that's corrected, that will be resolved. So there is one error in here, which is, you'd set up a high school revolving account, which is the one at the very bottom.
Yeah.
So that's for really fees for exams like SAT fees, which we are charging, which has been going through student activity accounts, which is the one that produces student activity accounts. So we set this up. However, there was an error in one of the account configurations, and so the revenue posted to the AP fees account. So that just has to be resolved. We'll correct that with the journal entry. So $12,000 will show up in the high school revolving account.
So the AP fees, like this year is the first time we're seeing this as a
Yeah,
revolving account.
because again, they were all going through student activities. The student activities are really not supposed to be used for anything. They're supposed to, the student activity accounts are separate from all this. They're like bank accounts which are set up for us to really, it's basically when we take money from students and hold it for them in order to pay for student activities that are not related to the core educational running of the district.
Right.
So it's like a chess club. You know, so the kids want to learn how to have a chess club with the teacher, they're going to pay $5 each, and that's going to pay for chessboards. And I'm going to dating myself in my example, I'm sure there's a more current one, like a Lego club, you know, if they want to pay into Lego club, sometimes they're going to get the money, but say they want it, so it's really the students' money that we are holding, and we use that money to pay for the costs of the club. So they're all set up using bank accounts, separate from our general ledgers and our bank accounts.
Right, we have a policy in terms of how much
Yeah,
each
exactly.
school
Yeah,
can
yeah. And
hold
so
in the account.
historically, things like AP fees are going through student activities, and it's not
That's not
really
right.
because
Yeah.
as part of what we are doing here as a business. I mean, isn't it? You know, we just kind of. It's more like they're more like agency funds. Like we act as agents for the students because we hold their money and use it to pay their AP fees. So
if we're paying their AP fees, why do we have a beginning balance? I would think that would be an in and out transaction.
yeah, it's historic. Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it's just historically, I guess over time, small balance as well.
We do give scholarship.
Yeah, and if there's scholarship, then there's scholarship.
I have to look that up.
Yeah.
At what
I'm
level?
sure we do at some,
The senior high scholarship?
I don't know.
No, I meant like if someone.
AP.
Yeah, is there ever, if someone can't afford to pay for it,
Oh.
is there any, I don't know.
That I don't know. But
No,
this
it's-
is a
no,
fair
no,
amount of
yeah,
money,
yeah.
so that's
It's
why.
just carried over from year to year.
It's just a historic home
No, historic now.
Yeah.
that is carried over.
We should look into that. And I feel philosophically it should be in and out.
Yeah.
Because it's for the AP exam, right? We're facilitating the AP
Yeah.
exam, so you pay however much it is,
Yep.
Yeah.
$100
And also
in,
pays-
$100 out.
It also pays for like, the cost of running the exams, you know,
Like a
the
proctor,
proctors.
or virtual high school,
Yeah.
AP, because we have some of those.
Yeah.
When you talk about the 34,023 figure,
Yes.
Yes, the beginning
Yeah.
balance, yeah.
So that is actually, it's less than that because 12,000 of that should be in the high school revolver. So you'll see that adjusted down.
So that should be 26 and then 12.
21 is 12.
27, yeah. Where's my phone with that?
So it should
Okay.
be, so it's like 21,150 each, is what it should be. Whereas the ending balance of 47,200. Exciting parts of that. Any other questions on the revolving accounts? And then the last one is just the bus maintenance report. There had been no further expenditure since September. So we carry on doing maintenance, so we do have a mechanic and he's been doing, you know, minor maintenance for the next thing.
what, we, on the 2020 leases, that should all be under warranty, right? Why are we spending any money on anything?
So occasionally there's things that aren't in our warranty. For example, we put new radios in, so that wasn't in our warranty. We provided radios for the leasing company.
Oh,
And that's really the major one. There was small some damage to one of the vehicles.
So sometimes the decision is made to have our in-house guy do some of these small fixes that might be under warranty, because taking the bus back, you're out of service for 3 days with the bus. A day there, a day
Yeah.
being fixed, and a day back in a perfect world.
do we have the
That
comprehensive
one-
insurance coverage though for some of this stuff, or like,
So if it's covered, actually by and large, if it's covered by warranty, we are always getting them. So we're always getting the leasing company to pay for any costs. Sometimes sometimes their part needs to replace, we'll have them just send it to us and we'll put the part in, because that's easier than us sending the bus up. But we still have them pay for the part. So like another example is we had an issue where a bus broke down because of something that was covered by warranty, and the leasing company is also paying for the towing. So really, the warranty is where it's for covering all those costs. But like I say, there was just some costs related to some specific things. There was a small collision. No students are going to in the bus the scratch on another vehicle.
is that bus 63?
Yeah.
Okay. And what's the deductible for an insurance claim or something? Is it like $2,500 for a bus or something?
So we put this through insurance, and it was like we got like $1,000 back on it.
Right. I was just curious.
Yeah.
They're brand new, so it's.
Yeah.
You mentioned one other thing involving budget, our approval of our capital requests. Michael, if you want to mention that.
So yes, at our meeting we got approval for the 3 articles, which are 3 capital projects, which were included in the capital article, which was the 7D van, the middle school entrance upgrades, and the new projector auditorium. So
very exciting, and very thankful to the town for their consideration and help with those items.
yeah.
And when are we gonna start construction on the,
entrance. So we started the work. We're just need to schedule. We have to get, because it's over $10,000, we have to get the quotes. So we're now just collecting quotes, and it will be a matter of when we can schedule it.
I think we can do it over this winter.
Yeah, there's no reason why we can't do it over the winter. It's just we have to. So we're just going to obviously impact. I mean, it's not in because it's kind of slightly outside the corridor, so it doesn't necessarily impact classrooms. We just need to decide if we can report how much, if any of it can be done during school time.
So make sure we do it securely.
Right,
but,
right.
We should.
It should be, yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll be able to get.
That's gonna be great.
It's gonna be
Yeah,
fantastic.
just dropping little kids' lunch off.
Yeah, so can you like order the lobby guard now?
Yeah. So we're starting that.
Yep, and it's run on the surveillance camera?
Yes, we have actually cameras in there, so it's partly about just making sure they can be accessed from the middle school. So I met with Ron and Bart and Principal Mills and Mark Kelly from facilities down there a few last week.
Oh, that's great.
Thank you. Okay, so on the revised agenda, there's a school start time under our section, and it's just a quick conversation. Dr. Sullivan and I had a meeting with Patty Thompson, who's the president of the Cohasset Teachers Association, about where we are on the process. The committee voted to instruct Dr. Sullivan to go back and take a look at other scenarios based on the input and feedback we got from the elementary parents and how that would look in terms of the contract. So the first vote that we took in August met the conditions of the contract.
Because it was within a year.
Because it was within the year parameter.
Over a year.
A subsequent change to that would require the contract to be opened and impact bargain, meaning they have to agree to accept this change because it's not within the context of the contract.
Yeah, they could decide to do a one-time side letter opening up the contract and allowing this to have of those.
Yeah, so I felt it was a pretty positive meeting because as with the parents, there's faculty impacted by the change, and my sense is without a commitment from Patty is that I felt that they would be open to look at it. They want to look at what it's going to be.
That's right.
And that's it, not what we think it might be. They want to look at what it's going to be, because we talk quite extensively around, do we vote first and then show it to you? Do we show it to you and then do we vote on it?
Right.
And the thought being, and correct me if I'm wrong, that if we show them a plan that we haven't voted on, then it's subject to further scrutiny.
Right. They definitely wanted a definitive plan that had been voted on that also had some detail, and which I'd be very happy to make sure I answer all their questions so they know exactly where it is, and then they would consider that, which is the first step, obviously. So that's good news.
Right, it's good news, because we felt that if there was not going to be any open to listen on this topic by the association,
It would be very difficult.
it would be very difficult to move forward. So I feel it's positive.
And we appreciate that.
Yeah, very much so. So that was just that. Just wanted to update everybody on that. So Dr. Sullivan will move forward with his scenario of an alternative.
My plan is to present that on the 20th.
On the 20th.
And that will be informed by it's November 20th.
Yeah.
Yes. Informed by my further parent forums, parent guardian forums, and the work we've done already. And then we'll be talking about it on that day.
And so I had, when Dr. Sullivan and I were talking about it, I said, well, it'd be interesting to know if the two elementary schools start at the same time, how many parents would be inclined to now take their children and drop them off if they had been on buses before, and how many, if they were getting on the same bus in the morning, as opposed to two different buses, might be inclined. So I think it's appropriate if we have questions for the parents
Yeah.
that,
My effort is to gather information.
right,
And so I'd be very interested to hear, that was an astute observation, that because the proposal could be that the times are right together, someone might decide to put both kids on the bus that haven't in the past, and someone might decide to drop both kids off who haven't in the past, depending on the family situation. So that could change the outlook of where we are. So that's good to know too.
yeah. So I think if any members between now and his coffees next week have any questions, well, of course, we're all invited to coffees, right?
I'm not really bringing coffees.
No, you're not
So
bringing them,
it's
but
actually the
Leslie's gonna
PSO
bring-
meetings.
oh,
I'm sure they'll
okay.
have something there, but
Yeah.
but it is, yeah.
Yeah, anyone can go. But if you have things that, you'd like him to ask the parents, if you can't attend, just email him and him alone.
Yeah,
And so
and
we
people
don't
can
have to
email
worry.
me. I'm in the
Yeah.
gathering of information phase,
Right.
so that's good to hear. I've already met with a couple of parents who had some thoughts and concerns. Willing to do that.
Any questions on that?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, so now we're on to reports from subcommittee and liaisons. Mr. Craig?
No, and I have a school council with Osgood meeting tomorrow, and I don't know anything to add.
Okay.
I have nothing.
Nothing, okay. I apologize, I'm pulling my phone out, but Ashley sent me something she wanted me to share, and I meant to print it at home, and I apologize. I just-
John Lynn?
Oh, Dawnland, I saw it. Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
23rd, I think. Is it?
I put it in my newsletter and I can't remember now, but I'm going very excited for it. I think it's the 25th. And I will tell you right now.
She didn't notice that.
Yeah, she announced it the last time, and I felt horrible because,
No, I'm gonna get it.
Okay, right here, John Lynn Fott, I'm gonna beat you.
Can it be me?
I don't
okay,
know, I thought it
here it
was.
is. Oh gosh, this vortex. Okay, Friday, November 22nd is 47 meters down. Friday, November 22nd at Second Congregational Church for students. Feature film, I don't know what it's about, sponsored by Safe Harbor.
Yeah. Dawnland is a film about indigenous people who I believe it's a series of real life vignettes or actual sort of situations where children were taken from homes and put in other settings. These are indigenous folks and their children, so it's a very powerful trailer if you look up Dawnland.
The other thing she had was Glove Up, is sponsoring Boxing and Fitness has teamed up with Safe Harbor to offer their popular Punch Fit class free to Cohasset youth on November 8th at 6:30. Available to the first 22 students in grades 8 through 12 who register. And then the last thing by Safe Harbor is Parenting Strategies, The Risky Teenage Years, on Tuesday, November 12th at 6:30 p.m. in the Learning Commons with Diana Clark, who's an MD, an expert in parenting and substance use disorders.
So the Dawnland is being shown at the Cohasset High School, in the Cohasset Middle High School auditorium. It's Monday, November 25th from 6 p.m.
Okay. Craig, I hate to do this, but I have to cancel our security subcommittee meeting tomorrow.
That's fine.
I have a work commitment. I'm so sorry. We'll have to reschedule.
I'm sorry.
I will send a note to Jennifer to cancel.
Okay.
The other part of town meeting, which was good, is we have $50,000 more in our special education reserve fund.
That's right.
And I believe we are now up to $364,000. And Michael, I just had a question. I know that our ceiling on that fund is 2% of net school spending. So I just don't know what because our actual expenditures in FY19 were $19,439,000.
Yeah.
So I think maybe just for our next finance and facility subcommittee, if we can
Yeah.
just get an idea of where our ceiling is on this sped fund. Because if it's off that number, we're almost at our ceiling.
Yes, 380. Well,
Yeah. And I know the mass conference is this week. I had every intention of going. I might be able to go Friday, but I have an unexpected work situation where I am required to be in the office full time. So I can't go tomorrow. I might try to get there on Friday, but I can't do that. Then I had one other thing. I'll pass this around.
Jen, are you going?
I'm gonna go tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow. I'll be there all week, really.
Oh, all week.
Yeah.
Oh. I'll be there in the afternoon.
Okay,
So,
great. Patrick, are you going?
I'm not.
Yeah. No one else is going?
I'm gonna try Friday afternoon to get down for a seminar or two. So in the MASC bulletin, they have there was a notice: school committee assistants supporting a healthy relationship public awareness campaign, and this is from the Lieutenant Governor's office, and it's a program called Respectfully, public awareness and prevention campaign that promotes healthy relationships, friendships, and intimate partner relationships for Massachusetts youth aged 12 to 18. And they're asking everyone, all the school committees, to consider supporting this with a resolution, and then all the committees that support it will be on their website and will be highlighted in their map and all of that. I don't expect an answer because I think it's kind of a weighty topic, and perhaps input from Principal Scott and Principal Mills might be important on this. It's a resolution, it's not really a call to action.
Right.
I think we do a lot of things in our social emotional teachings and instruction about good relationships and being respectful, and what Brian's doing with captains and culture. I mean, that all kind of ties into it.
Yeah, and the middle school health teachers and high school health teachers are really
Yeah.
addressing these issues as well.
Um,
But yeah, no, it's
But I think there should be some extra copies so you can, did I print out a bunch
You
of
did.
extras? Yeah, so you can give them to Brian or John, and
Sure, absolutely,
just
sure.
let us know. And I'd like to know what, after the committee looks at it, what they feel, if it's something worthwhile for the committee to endorse. I had a question on, we've been talking about communication. And I think the only group that we haven't talked about communicating is the school committee. And we've talked about blogs, and we've talked about, coffees, having parents come in, and all of that. And the S'mores newsletters that you guys send out seem to be very well received. They're very
easy to see.
easy to see. They're very informative. And there's also been questions from parents like, how do we know what's on your agenda? When you have agendas, when are they available? How can we get them? And my question would be, if people are interested, should or could the school committee have a Blackboard Connect mechanism? One, to send out agendas when we have meetings, and two, to send out our own newsletter? And the S'mores.
Yeah, you could. You certainly could. You could even in the corner of my newsletter if you wanted to do that. That might be the one thing I'm conscious of, is that we do a lot of newsletters,
Yeah.
and that's good. I think people are being informed at
Yeah.
the local level, and
Yeah.
I'm doing more of an overarching newsletter. My newsletter is becoming kind of epic. I mean, people could spend 5 minutes
Yeah.
or like 5 hours
Yeah.
on it if they really get into it. But having said that, we do have a corner. Dr. Scollins has a section that she writes. Mary Buchanan has a section that she writes. Elisa has been contributing to her section.
Yeah.
Like
if
a
it-
newspaper.
It sort of is, and all it would take for you to do is to send me the information, and I would put it right in my newsletter. My newsletter is gonna go out every first Friday of every month, so that I'd be very happy to add that to it, and that way they knew it was one place, and they could look for it. In addition to that, or in substitution to that, if you'd like to do your own, we'd be glad to send it out.
I think people would especially want to know when the student spotlights are too.
I think it's great, and I'm very much in favor of it, however
What do
you'd
you,
like to.
what do you guys think? Greg?
Just somebody would have to send me the info.
I definitely think we need to communicate better. I'm reluctant to really discuss communication without Ashley here, because I know it's a really hot issue for her. I think it's one of the main reasons she ran. So, and I value her input on that area. Not that I don't value everyone else's, but I basically want her here.
I just kind of wanted to socialize the idea, and we can flesh it out
Sure.
at the next meeting, if people thought it was good or not good. Because I know we've been kind of grappling with how do we do this, and Blackboard seems to be the easiest.
I think there might be a more effective means, and I don't know if I have the answer, so
Yeah.
I'm presenting a problem without a solution, Ellen, for that I
No, that's
apologize,
fine.
but
No worries.
I'd like Ellen,
Ashley, sure. Okay. All right.
Well, it's making me think maybe we could put the goals on the next agenda, because remember how we normally, like, we sort of check in on our goals?
Yep, I think we have that scheduled.
We would put that periodically on the
Yeah, we have it on December 18th.
December 18th.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Paul, do you have anything?
Nope.
No? Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so at this point, I'd like to have a motion to move into executive session
We
for...
gotta approve the minutes, don't we?
We don't have any minutes.
Oh,
There weren't
okay.
any in the packet.
Oh, okay, good. All right.
So moved.
Okay, so for a motion, sorry,
Second.
sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Okay, so for exemption number 3, executive session, strategy related to negotiations with union personnel, and I can't see the clock.
9:07.
9:07, thank you.
Might be a minute.
Thank you for the repair there.
Yeah, I think I added a minute just to get us out of here anyway.
We had back up for daylight savings time.
Hopefully this will be quick. So,
Can we go?
thank you.
Thank
You
you.
can unplug it or turn it off, yes, thank you.
Great night.
You too.
Thank you, Amy.
Yep.
Thanks, Amy.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Yeah,